Welcome back. So let's start out with a little bit of an explanation. So a bunch of you have been sort of complaining about when I'm taxiing around the ailerons are moving up and down, and yeah, half the time I'm not holding onto the stick, so that's why they're moving. But you seem to forget they did a bunch of work in here. Remember, I replaced the bearings in there for that locking mechanism in there that keeps it engaged. I also put those hard points there, the carbon tubes underneath there to stop that floor from flexing where the pulleys were, and you know, we had that stick under there that was moving when the stick was moving, so I did that to fix this problem. And you can see here when I bounce the wing up and down, the aileron does move around, and it's the same as when you're just going down the runway and you're hitting some bumps. It does move up and down if you're not holding on to the stick there, just because, you know, the natural vibration in there. But see what I've done now, just temporarily, I've got my little tow bar there, and I've wedged the side stick in there so it can't move. It's on the full lock to the left, and you can see the ailerons all the way up. And if I pull on it, not too hard, but you know, if I move it around, there's a little bit of movement there, maybe half an inch at the tip, but overall it's fairly rigid. And likewise the one over here that's all the way down, if I pull on that a little bit, you know, there's a little bit of movement in there, but you know, percentage wise of how far the throw is on that whole thing, it's not that much. And as you can see here, if I put a ruler on there and measure it, the up and down, it's basically about a half an inch there. So rest assured I'm comfortable with this, and I've run it by Mark and he's okay with it. And again, it's something that'll have to be felt out, whether or not it's tight enough, but I'm pretty happy with it right now, and we'll see how it goes in flight testing. Alright, so next up I had to polish this upper wing skin and also the winglet. If you remember, about a week or so ago I did get it all sanded with 400 just to take off the roughness from the overspray. So here I'm just getting on there with my little buffing wheel and some correcting compound. And I know it's on primer and it just seems really weird to be buffing primer, but you know, we want a nice smooth surface to be, so it's nice and aerodynamic. These wing foils used on these wings are laminar flow, so the air needs to stay attached to them. So anyway, I got on that and got the top surface of that whole wing done. I also managed to do the inside and outside of the winglet on this side. And then I also got the tall ladder out and was able to do the tops, which hadn't actually been sanded yet. And there was only a couple of places there that needed to be sanded just because of overspray that was making it a bit rough. So I got the tall ladder out and managed to get that done and polished as well. So now the upper surface of the wings both have been done, and both sides of the winglets have been done, and the underside just needs a bit of a polish really. There doesn't need any sanding, and then probably I'll do the same treatment on the nose. But there you can see it's all done, and there's a bit of a sheen to it now, so everything should be nice and smooth and aerodynamic for testing there. You can see there the little bit of reflection on the upper surface of that wing. So yeah, still primer and stuff, but it's definitely a smoother finish now. And as I mentioned just before, I also did the tops of both winglets. I just needed the taller ladder to get that done, but those are done. And the air conditioning system still has a leak in it, unfortunately. The top of this hose that we welded up the other day is now leaking out the crimp there, so I'm going to go back to the quick connectors there, and I'm waiting on another part for that. And as you can see there, I had that pulled to 20 inches and it just leaked down to 10. So anyway, waiting on the parts for that. Should be in tomorrow, and I'll get that sorted out the right way. And in the interest of getting some performance data in order to compare performance on the Raptor, my new friend and hangar neighbor Todd was nice enough to take my Garmin camera, which has the GPS data and stuff in it, and put it on his Cirrus SR20. And here he is just about to take off and go once around the pattern, and so I can gather all that data and run a comparison against the Raptor. So rolling out and taking off. Nose wheels off. So there we go. And here's the view from inside the cabin on the Garmin camera. It's taken off. So I put the same telemetry in there. Now this is a Cirrus SR20. It's not the 22. It has a 200 horse engine, and I didn't actually get to see exactly what his weight was, but I'm guessing it's probably 2,600 pounds because the max gross on this is 3,000 pounds, and he was in the aircraft on his own. I don't believe he had any baggage. If it was very light, and I'm not even sure if he had full fuel or not, but I think he probably had about 2,600 pounds, maybe as little as 2,500 pounds. And there you can see the performance on that. And so I believe he gets the nose off there around about, right about there, 79 miles an hour is where it comes off. So anyway, we'll discuss that a little bit more in a little bit. So one of the things that Justin and Elliot, who are the designated test pilots at this point, want me to do is to figure out what power setting I can run the engine at and maintain for 3 minutes on the ground, static, without sort of running temperatures up too high or having any sort of problems at all. And that would be an indication of the power setting that they could quite happily take off at and cruise and climb at for the first flight and stay in the pattern for 3 minutes and have enough time to get back around without sort of any worry of anything overheating. So what I'm doing here, I'm going to be doing this several different times to figure this out exactly where it needs to be, and also with the prop pitch setting on the governor. So right now I've just got the prop set to flat, but I'm not even getting to the maximum here. I've got this sitting at around about 3,400 RPM, and the governor only kicks in at 3,800 RPM. So the prop is just running in flat pitch for this particular test. And I'm not sure if how well you can see the instrumentation there, but I'm just watching first of all the oil temp and the coolant temp, and those max out at about 250 is where I'm comfortable taking them to. The engine would normally, the oil temperature would normally just sort of hover at 217 once it's all set, because that's where the thermostat inside the engine is. The radiator or the coolant should actually run lower than that once it's flying, because of the air running across the intake there and running across the radiator. But when you're sitting on the ground like this, the only air that you're getting is just what's being pulled around the fuselage by the prop. And there is some, when I put my hand out the door there, I can feel just like a slight breeze, maybe sort of 5 knots at most, just pulling past the side of the cabin there. And the other thing I'm looking for is just to make sure that the EGTs aren't spiking or getting out of hand or whatever. I just want them to stabilize and maintain a certain temperature and not be sort of gaining and gaining and gaining. So as you can see, I've got the stopwatch there on my phone on the center of the dash there, so I'm seeing how long this is taking. And obviously I could have just done this from the time clock on the video, but it's nice to have a counter there that I can look at without having to sort of glance around at the time on the tablet or something like that. So it's mainly for my purposes there. And obviously I'm sticking my head out every now and then, look to see if any coolant's leaking out or anything like that out of the engine as it's running up. And the temps slowly crept up there, and got all the way to 250 right as I was getting close to the 3 minute mark, or just after the 3 minute mark, which is what my goal was. And so at that point I just powered it back. Now I doubt very much that you could do this same sort of power run with an aviation engine, because the heads would just get so hot without any real air running across them, or maybe the prop would push some, but I doubt you would do this sort of run up to that level on an aviation engine with air-cooled heads, or maybe you would, I don't know. Anyway, it was a success. I didn't have any problems with that, and I'll be running another one later with a different RPM setting on the governor to put a bit more load on it. So after letting it cool down a little bit, just idling there on the ramp, decided it was time to take it for another run down the runway. Most of the other aircraft that were using the runway had all sort of cleared out of there. It got busy there for a minute. So this time I was going to run it up to full power, but I've gone and reduced the maximum amount of fuel that goes in for 100% throttle from 130 milligrams down to 100 milligrams, so about a 20% reduction in maximum fuel. So I'm not going to be blowing as much smoke or anything like that, and probably not get quite as much power. So this is again just flat prop. and bringing the power up, and then releasing the brakes, although I didn't really have it completely pushed on it. But anyway, this is what this run looked like. And as you'll see in a little bit, there you can see a little bit of smoke coming out the back there. Not as much as before though. And no problems with any nose shimmy. Nice and stable. And you know, each time I'm taking it out there, I'm just going a little bit quicker, just feeling it out. But I've got really good directional control. It feels definitely planted in terms of not wandering over the runway or doing anything weird when it hits a bump or anything like that. And you know, the rudders are responding pretty much at 20 knots now. If I put full rudder in at 20 knots, I get just enough authority to pull back to centerline if it was straying. But because this engine is in the back, it doesn't want to pull to the left like a tractor aircraft. It wants to track straight, and just takes a little bit of input on the rudders just to keep it pointed ahead. And here I'm just pretty much letting it roll out almost to the end here. And I think this is the second last exit there, you know, to the other side taxiway. So yeah, nothing too exciting there, which is the way we like it. Didn't have any problems, and so I figured I'd take it back. And of course the air conditioning is not working, so each time I taxied it back, I stopped right about here and opened the door and just taxi with the door open all the way back to the other end of the runway, because it's pretty much a mile to go down there. And so this is what this particular run looks like there with the nose wheel. And as you can see, no real problems there. Looks nice and stable. So yeah, this is what it looks like. This is the last run. So I did 3 runs altogether, and you know, I can't show all of them to you. The video would end up being super long. But anyway, this is the last run, and this is the one that I went the quickest. And this one I just put a little bit of prop in there, just basically click the toggle switch just really briefly, and it ended up setting up the engine for about 35-50 RPM on the governor. So I'll let you watch this one. And as you can see there, depending on which one you're looking at, I hit either 69 or 70 miles per hour. The indicated airspeed on the G3X actually showed 77 knots. But you know, a lot of that is induced air from the prop, maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure. But either way, it was the quickest run that I've done. And 70 mile an hour is actually the airspeed, or the indicated speed at which Mark's spreadsheet indicates that if I pull back on the stick, I should be able to get the nose to rotate. So I'm actually going to do that coming up, but I'm going to do it after I've released the power and just do it a little bit and just see if I can get the nose to go light. And you know, obviously I won't go flying, and the nose may come off, but if the power's been backed off, it'll be already decelerating, and so it may just come off briefly or get light, and I'll be able to look at the camera angle and just see you know, if it got light or if it came off or whatever. It's always nice to sort of just take things one step at a time, but you'll have to wait for the next video in order to see that one. In the meantime, this is what the data looked like there on the ECU. So you see the 3 different spikes there. Those are the 3 different runs that I did down the runway, and this is the last one there. So if I click sort of at the end of that, just before I reduce the power there, you can see fuel flow 17 gallons an hour, RPM 3,500 and change. EGT was about 1780, which I'm comfortable with. Boost was 44, so 30 pounds of boost. And then you can see the governor where it was kicking in there, where the sort of vibrations are in the oil pressure. And temps were good there, 212 on the oil temp, 200 on the coolant. and the EGT actually got to 1800 at the very end there, and I'm okay with that. The other day actually got it up to over 2000, mainly because there was so much extra fuel it was just burning out through the exhaust. And after that 3-minute run, that was the tiny little bit of coolant that was captured there in the overflow, so I'm okay with that. But then after looking at everything, I noticed something weird here, and maybe you can see that belt is slipping off. So turns out what happened is the back wall there on that lower pulley, the metal wall that keeps the belt in line, actually came off. It's just a press fit. You can see it sort of hanging there on the boss there for that torsional damper, and just sort of swinging in the wind there. And that happened, I believe, on the very last run. Just popped off, and no damage to the belt or anything like that. You can just see a little bit of marking on the inside there where it was running sort of a third of the way off, but overall nothing to worry about. And this ring just popped off because a long time ago I actually dropped this thing and bent that ring, and I guess it was enough to make it come loose on the press fit. So because they just press it on there, and so anyway, my solution is to take it up to the master and have him put some welding on there, because I had no reason to take that ring off. And this is what it looks like there once he's welded on there. So I can put that back on tomorrow and be back in business. And the moment you've been waiting for, the 3,500 pound Challenger against the 2,600 pound 200 horse Cirrus. And with about 35% more weight and slightly more than half the engine displacement, the Raptor is pretty much keeping up with about 7 miles an hour behind at the 70 mile an hour point. So pretty happy with that, and I can still do some more tuning on the prop pitch settings and also fuel delivery, so maybe we'll get them next time, and maybe you guys can figure out how much horsepower we have if they have 200. And that's the update for the first half of this week. Thanks again for watching, and tune in again on Saturday.